Welcome to Stoic Today, YouTube. In a world full of noise, confusion, and endless distractions, you've found a place built on timeless strength, quiet wisdom, and unshakable clarity. If you're searching for a deeper sense of purpose, mental discipline, and the mindset of true power, you've landed exactly where you need to be. Take one meaningful moment right now. Click the subscribe button, drop a comment that reflects your journey, and share this with someone who's forgotten how powerful they truly are. This isn't about motivation, it's about transformation. Because what you're about to hear isn't just another video, it's a shift in how you think, how you lead, and how you live. It's a bold invitation to rise above emotion, to master yourself, and to show up in the world with quiet authority. Our Sage O. Join thousands of men, right here at Stoic Today, who are choosing every day to build mental toughness, emotional resilience, and laser-focused purpose. This is where you learn to walk with intention, to lead with strength, and to never waste energy on what doesn't deserve your reaction. And now, let's step into today's powerful message. Real men don't argue. They do this when disrespected. What if real strength isn't about proving your worth, but in knowing it so deeply, you no longer need to speak it? What if silence, calmly held, is the sharpest weapon a man can carry? You'll never waste your power again. Listen closely. This message could change everything. Subscribe to Stoic Today right now and begin living from the calm, confident power you were born to own. Please listen to the next great content. Have you ever seen a lion waste time explaining himself to a hyena? Absolutely not. He doesn't growl to prove his dominance. He simply walks with unmatched confidence. That's because real power never needs to shout, it radiates silently. Real men, like lions, understand that arguing isn't strength, it's a distraction. They rise above conflict, not because they're weak, but because they know who they are and refuse to hand over their peace for the sake of temporary validation. A true man walks with intention, and his presence alone demands respect without ever raising his voice. Have you ever seen a lion waste time explaining himself to a hyena? Absolutely not. He doesn't growl to prove his dominance. He simply walks with unmatched confidence. That's because real power never needs to shout, it radiates silently. Real men, like lions, understand that arguing isn't strength, it's a distraction. They rise above conflict, not because they're weak, but because they know who they are and refuse to hand over their peace for the sake of temporary validation. A true man walks with intention, and his presence alone demands respect without ever raising his voice. In a world addicted to noise, silence is a superpower. Remaining calm when provoked shows restraint that only the disciplined possess. It's easy to lash out, to respond out of anger, but true control lies in knowing when not to respond. Letting silence speak isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's how real men communicate their standards without uttering a single word. Let your standards answer for you. You walk away not out of fear, but because your peace is priceless, because your presence isn't available for every conversation. A weak man needs the last word. A strong man needs discipline, because anyone can raise their voice, but not everyone can raise their value. You want to be respected? Start by respecting yourself. Stop explaining your worth to people who can't comprehend it. Stop wrestling in the mud with folks who get a thrill from dragging you down. Kings don't clap back. They ascend. They don't need to say it. They show it. Real men don't chase respect. They command it through presence and action. It's not about how loud you are. Respect that is demanded through fear is never real. It fades the moment fear does. True respect comes from integrity, from consistency, from the quiet dignity in a man's habits. When you respect yourself, when you show up on time, keep your promises, and set firm boundaries, the world takes notice. Real respect flows from how a man carries himself, especially when no one is watching. The truth is, if you have to ask for respect, you've already given it away. Masculine energy doesn't beg, it doesn't convince, it doesn't perform. It walks into a room and the air shifts. Not because it demands attention, but because it doesn't need it. The man who respects himself sets the tone. He doesn't have to say, "You better not talk to me like that." His energy already told them. People watch how you treat yourself. That's where it starts. If you tolerate disrespect from yourself, missing your goals, slacking on your word, compromising your values, then don't be surprised when others reflect that back at you. But when you keep your word to yourself, when you honor your time, when you protect your
peace, you radiate something different. You radiate discipline, you radiate control, you radiate self-respect, and that forces others to decide. Either rise to your level or leave. You don't need to post about it. You don't need to announce it, you live it. That's the difference. Too many men think respect comes from dominating others, from proving they're alpha, from barking orders or clapping back. But none of that matters if you can't dominate yourself. The man who can sit still in the face of chaos. The man who doesn't flinch when provoked. The man who walks away with his pride intact instead of wrestling in the dirt. That's the man who commands respect. Respect isn't given to the loudest in the room. It's given to the man who doesn't need the room at all. When you become the type of man who doesn't argue, who acts with intention, who knows his value, who moves with purpose, disrespect becomes rare because people can feel the standard you've set. Not with your words, but with your presence. And presence doesn't lie. Arguments are for those trying to prove a point. Kings don't explain the crown. There's a reason real leaders don't waste time debating with people who don't understand them. Because when you know who you are, when you've put in the work, when you've built yourself brick by brick, you don't need to convince anyone of anything. That's what arguments really are. Attempts to prove your worth to people who don't value it. And every second you spend trying to be understood by the wrong crowd, you drain your power. The man who argues is still trying to be seen, still trying to be validated. But the man who's locked in, who knows what he stands for, doesn't argue, he decides. He acts. He removes himself from the room and lets the results do the talking. See, people will bait you. He'll push you, challenge you, throw shade in clever ways. And your ego wants to fire back. It wants to show them you're not the one. But here's the truth. The moment you engage, you've already lost. You've dropped to their level. You've traded peace for petty. And for what? To feel right. To look tough. You never see a lion explaining himself to sheep. Why? Because the lion knows the crown isn't something you argue about. It's something you wear. And when you wear it well, no one questions it for long. They may not like you. They may not understand you. But they'll respect you because you never stoop low just to win an argument. It takes strength to walk away. It takes strength to say, this conversation isn't worth my energy. Not because you're scared, but because you value your peace more than your pride. And when a man learns how to hold his power in silence, people start to notice. They start to think twice before testing him again. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't need to say. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them throw shots in the dark. You don't need to answer every opinion, every insult, every challenge. Because kings don't explain the crown. They protect it, they live it. And they keep walking forward while the rest are still shouting in place. Emotional control is masculine strength. Reaction is weakness, disguise is pride. In a world that constantly tries to provoke you, the real power lies in your ability to stay calm. Not because you're numb, not because you don't feel, but because you're disciplined enough not to let your emotions run your life. Anyone can snap, anyone can yell, anyone can throw a fit when they feel disrespected. That doesn't make you strong, that makes you predictable, and predictable men are easy to manipulate. You know how the game works. Push a button, get a reaction. That's what people are counting on. They want you to lose your cool, to step out of character, to say something reckless, to act out of ego. Because the moment you do, they win. You gave them what they wanted, your power. But the man who can feel everything, anger, betrayal, disrespect, and still pause before he moves, that man is dangerous in the best way. He doesn't operate from emotion. He operates from clarity. His decisions aren't driven by how he feels in the moment. They're guided by who he is at his core. That's the difference. When you react, you're not in control. You're being controlled. It might feel like pride, like standing up for yourself, but it's not. It's your ego. And ego is a fragile thing. It cracks under pressure. It needs to be right. It needs to be seen. But true masculinity is silent, calm, unshakable. It doesn't flinch when disrespected. It watches. It measures. And when the time comes, it doesn't explode. It executes. Most men think being emotional is the same as being passionate. It's not. Passion is directed energy. Emotion without discipline is chaos, and chaos is exactly what weak people want from you. Because as long as you're fighting battles inside yourself, you can't lead, you can't build, you can't rise. The strongest men you'll ever meet are the ones who don't raise their voice. They don't need to. Their presence speaks louder than words, louder than anger, louder than noise. They've mastered the hottest battlefield of all, the one inside their own mind. Control your emotions and you control your outcomes. Lose control and you hand that power to someone else every time. Silence is a power move. Confuses. It disarms. It dominates. Most people expect noise. They expect resistance. They expect you to argue, defend, explain, lash out. That's what they're ready for. So when you hit them with silence, it shakes them. They don't know what to do with it because silence forces people to sit with themselves, with their words, with their behavior, with their guilt. And not everyone is built for that. See, the average man thinks strength is in how fast he claps back, how quick he can check someone. But the man with real presence, he doesn't need the last word. He doesn't need to match energy. He controls the energy. And he does it without saying a word. Silence makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to reveal their own insecurity. It leaves them trying to figure you out while you're already 10 steps ahead. That's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it dominant. Because when you stay quiet, they start to fill in the blanks. They start wondering what you're thinking. And that's when you've already won because they're playing defense and you're in control of the pace. But silence isn't about shutting down or running away. It's about listening with power. It's about using restraint. It's about saying, I don't have to entertain this. When you choose silence, you choose to preserve your energy for battles that actually matter. Not petty conversations, not emotional bait, not disrespect that doesn't even deserve acknowledgement. There's nothing weak about being silent. Weak is yelling to prove a point. Weak is needing validation. Silence. As for the man who's mastered himself, the man who knows that every word he speaks is an investment, and he doesn't spend it on nonsense. When you respond with silence, you're showing control, not fear. You're showing standards, not submission. And you're teaching people exactly how to treat you without raising your voice, without explaining yourself, without reacting. Let them talk. Let them provoke. Let them wonder why you won't engage. Because the loudest man in the room is rarely the one in power. The one in power is the one who doesn't need to speak to be heard. He just sits still and lets silence speak louder than words ever could. Walking away is not cowardice. It's the ultimate flex. Most men are taught that backing down is weakness, that turning your back on a confrontation means you lost. But that's not power. That's pride talking. And pride unchecked has destroyed more men than failure ever has. The truth is, it takes more strength to walk away from nonsense than it does to stand in it and fight. See, anyone can get loud. Anyone can puff their chest, throw insults, make threats. But when you walk away calmly, deliberately, without saying a word, you send a message far louder than shouting ever could. You're telling the world, I don't have time for this. I value my peace more than proving a point. And that's rare. That's powerful. Because walking away means you've mastered your emotions. It means you've got nothing to prove to anyone. You're not moved by drama,
disrespect, or ego traps. You know who you are, and you know what you're worth. So, you don't chase closure, and you don't beg for understanding. You just move on, unshaken, unapologetic. The weak man stays and argues to protect his pride. The strong man walks away to protect his purpose. Think about it. What do you really win by staying in a fight that leads nowhere? What do you gain by engaging with someone who's not interested in understanding, only in controlling or provoking? That's not a battle worth fighting. That's a distraction. And distractions are deadly when you're building something bigger. When you walk away, you're choosing to keep your energy. You're choosing to protect your time. You're choosing to operate on a higher level where not everything deserves your reaction. You're not running, you're rising, and people feel that. The greatest flex isn't a loud outburst, it's composure under pressure. When you walk away without a word, unfazed and unapologetic, you demonstrate maturity that most never reach. Let others waste their energy on chaos. The man who controls his reactions controls the room. Power is quiet, focused, and intentional. Let them wonder. Let them realize too late that the moment you stop responding, they lost all access to your power. Self-respect is non-negotiable. When a man honors himself, disrespect becomes irrelevant. Everything starts with how you see yourself. If you don't value your own time, energy, and peace, no one else will either. You can't expect the world to treat you like a king if you carry yourself like a beggar, begging for approval, validation, attention. That's not how respect is earned. Respect begins with you. When you have self-respect, is a certain weight in the way you walk, a tone in your silence, a boundary in your eyes. You don't need to announce it. People can feel it. They feel it when you say no without guilt. They feel it when you don't tolerate disrespect, not with rage, but with distance. They feel it when you choose peace over pettiness. Not because you're scared, but because you've got standards. And standards don't move for anyone. The truth is, disrespect only cuts deep when you haven't built a solid foundation of self-worth. When you're unsure of who you are, when you haven't done the work, when you're looking for identity through others, then every insult hits like a bullet. But when you've done the inner work, when you've held yourself accountable, pushed through pain, kept your promises, and earned your own respect, then the noise bounces right off. You'll need applause when you already approve of yourself. That's why self-respect is untouchable, because it doesn't come from what you wear, who you date, or what you post. It comes from discipline, from consistency, from showing up for yourself when no one's watching, from walking away when staying would cost your soul. That's real power. That's real masculinity. When you honor yourself, you stop chasing people who don't see your value. You stop arguing with people who don't deserve your time. You stop forcing conversations where you're not heard, and suddenly disrespect loses its sting. Not because it doesn't happen, but because it doesn't reach you anymore. You become unavailable for nonsense, not in a loud, arrogant way, but in a quiet, grounded one. You move like someone who has nothing to prove and everything to protect. That's the secret. When you respect yourself deeply, the world adjusts. Either it rises to meet your standard, or it gets left behind before you go. Let me ask you something. If you're committed to becoming the kind of man who doesn't raise his voice to be heard, who doesn't chase attention to be seen, but instead commands respect through his presence, his mindset, and his discipline, then this moment is your defining line. No more drifting. No more following the crowd. No more making excuses. It's time to rise. To stand apart. To build the internal strength, focus, and vision that separates leaders from followers, warriors from wanderers. If that message resonates deep in your spirit, don't wait. Subscribe to Stoic today, right now. This channel is not entertainment. It's your daily source of mental fuel, grounded truth, and radical personal growth. Drop a comment below and declare how you're ready to move differently starting today. Share this message with a brother who's ready to step into his next level and stop settling for less. Thank you for being here. Your evolution begins it begins right here with this message. Don't just scroll, listen deeply. This content is more than words. It's a call to greatness. Let Stoic today be the voice that awakens your power. Subscribe now and start acting like the man you were meant to be.